Hi everybody, and welcome back to another fourth tier fever episode here on the football deck in partnership with Sky Bet. We have got a jam-packed pod today covering all of yesterday's action. Delighted to be joined by Luke Payne and Jack Walton. How are you, chaps?
Yeah, I mean, not too bad. Ignoring the football, well, I mean, we may have lost to Accrington, but I've got to meet Joe Tomlinson and Nathan Thompson, so that's all right. But yeah, I'm back after a week off. But if I'm anything like our players, that means I'm about to pick up a training injury and be gone for another 2 months. But we'll see how we go today.
Yeah, I don't think either of us wanted to answer that question then. We both had pretty disappointing weeks. It's one of them. Football comes and goes, and we'll see what happens next week.
Yeah, fair play. I do feel a little bit like the Cheshire Cat sat here this week, but we will move on swiftly. As usual, we will be deep diving into our six chosen fixtures, and we will be starting with Barnet 3, Grimsby Town 0. Not sure many would have been brave enough to predict that scoreline before the game. Looked like Barnet switched to a sort of more direct 4-4-2, which seemed to suit them down to the ground and shocked Grimsby. Bit of a concerning result for Grimsby. Dave Artell appeared to be pretty upset, pretty furious with his side in their post-match press conference. I think he described them as abject. Um, while Barnet, on the other hand, carried their brilliant win away at Crewe last week, carried that on, and another fantastic win against a good side today, a good side at the weekend. Pushed themselves up to 13th in the table and only 1 point off the playoffs. Luke, come to you first.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely one of the shocks of the week. I mean, there were a few, but this is probably the biggest one based on the way that Grimsby have been performing in recent weeks. But to be fair to Barnet, this is easily their best performance of the season, and I think it was just a case that Grimsby came up against a team that just wanted it more, which is probably the same problem we faced in our game against Accrington, which fortunately we're not covering too much today. But I think it's very much a similar premise. I mean, you look at the nature of the goals. I'm looking at the first two in particular, especially that second one. There's no way that ball should have been turned over there, and then from there it's just too easy. Um, to the point that there's not even that much to break down. It's just a case of I think you have to credit the desire and the drive of Barnet to really put pressure on Grimsby. Like yes, it's a home fixture, but it's a home fixture against a side that have been very very good so far this season. And yeah, I mean the one thing I was going to point out actually with Barnet is that three of their four wins have actually come against what is quote unquote probably stronger opposition in Grimsby, Crewe, and Swindon. So they're taking the fight to some top sides there already, and this is the most convincing win of theirs yet, as I've said. So I think they're finally getting used to the level. Is probably how I'd put it.
Yeah, I think there's always a way of looking at it. After a big win at Sheffield Wednesday, midweek, potentially there's always going to be a come down for Grimsby. Obviously, there was after the Man United game, they lost to Bristol Rovers. Now they're losing at the weekend after their cup win on Tuesday night. However, a 3-0. A 3-0 result, and also just the performance. I think you can see it's not a Grimsby side we've seen this season. Let's put it that way. Sort of a completely different look of a team. That they didn't look like they'd be anywhere near the top of the table, really. And I think you sort of just look at it. Potentially, the energy's just gone. Potentially, it's just a bad day at the office. It's one of those where you just chalk off. Okay, forget this week's happened. Let's go again next week. They've had so many good positive weeks and good positive performances. I think we've all been really impressed by them so far. Potentially, let's just draw a line under it and sort of start fresh next week and continue doing what they were doing back at the start of the season. For Barnet, again, I think the last podcast I might have been on a review show was the first game of the season, and it sort of was a calamitous start, if that's a word. I think we were sort of questioning Dean Brennan's tactics and the way that he spoke about certain players in certain areas so soon into the season. but I think he's really got his team playing now, and that was an exciting watch from a Barnet perspective. And I think you're looking forward now, and potentially he's found a style and sort of a situation in the lineup that sort of works for him and is looking sort of positive for them. But obviously, whether they can carry that on is the big question, and we'll wait and see.
Yeah, I was kind of, I'm really conflicted with Barnet. They're quickly becoming sort of a new Crawley for me. It becoming very difficult to predict. I mean, they had the rocky start, as we've mentioned, then picked up a couple of decent results, and then there was the Shrewsbury home match, and they lost that game comfortably to who a really struggling side. But again, following that up with two really good wins, it is looking like maybe that was a bit of a bad day at the office, and I've read too much into it because Dean Brennan he's a winner, isn't he? He's showing himself to be a lot more adaptable than I think I thought he probably would. They are changing systems, and he is making changes. So yeah, fair play to Barnet, and like we say, I think for Grimsby, dust yourselves off. Go again next week. They're a good side. Shouldn't be too much to be concerned about. Right, we'll move on. Game number 2. Barrow beating Crewe 1-0 at Holker Street. Really, really good result for Barrow, and it put an end to their 3-match losing run. Just what Andy Wing needed, him and his players. I think he described their overriding feeling being relief in the post-match press conference, which makes sense. Isaac Fletcher's strike evaded quite literally everybody and hit the back of the net on 58 minutes. Looked like a game where Crewe dominated the ball, which I think everybody would expect, but it was a game of pretty low quality. Lee Bell seemed very upset and angry with the performance of his players in his post match. Looking at Crewe, they now want to run 5 league games without a win. Lost to Gillingham, Swindon, Barnet, and Barrow, and I've only picked up just the 1 point, and that was away at Colchester. That, to be honest, they looked a little bit fortunate to get. Do we think Lee Bell might be coming under a little bit of pressure? I don't know. He's one of those similar to Matt Sadler. They've got a bit of carryover from last season. So, Jack, come to you first.
Yeah, I think Lee Bell is one of those managers for me. Same with Matt Sadler. I think he suits the club perfectly. And I think the system that Crewe have and the way they structure the team and everything, I mean, I've praised it to death, really. I love the way they do things. And I think you'll always have those seasons and sort of those results where it's always going to be a bit rocky. You're not going to have a flying season. There'll always be those patches, but I think they can overcome them, and the youth that they bring into the squad will always turn out relatively well. I think that's potentially just the only worry at the moment. I mean, a big signing. I think we can all agree was Emery Tesgall in the summer. I'd like to think that. I thought he was going to fly in this division. He'd be in the next Nathan Lowe and everything. He's now 9 matches, 2 starts. So only 253 minutes played, but no goals or assists. And it's starting to sort of creep up now, and potentially a little bit of pressure is sort of on his shoulders. But we'll wait and see. But yeah, there's still, I think that they need to be better, but I don't think there'll be any pressure. I don't think there needs to be pressure on Crewe, because I don't think, in my personal opinion, they were going to be anywhere near the playoffs. Potentially top half, but not, that's a good season. I think they're always trying to build instability as a football club rather than a team playing football. Rather than on the pitch, it's more about the off the pitch. More shots, more possession, but not coming away with the chances, and they need to get better in front of goal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very glad you brought up Emery Tesgall, because that's probably the main thing I've got highlighted in my notes. Is that's now 9 league games where he's just not scored. And I do appreciate that he's played not necessarily up front in all those appearances. They do sort of chop and change between that striker role and the attacking midfield, but he's certainly someone you'd hope to see more from, really. But Crewe did create a few chances in that game. I wouldn't say anything particularly clear cut. There were a couple I would have expected them to do a little bit better with, but it's the whole performance just felt very flat. And to be fair, I think that's probably representative of the game as well. It probably wasn't the most exciting game in the world, but I think it says a lot that for Barrow's goal, the only player trying to close down the man was the goalkeeper. Everyone else kind of just stood there waiting for it, and they kind of just made it very easy to put it away, albeit through a whole lot of bodies, but they didn't put him under anywhere near enough pressure. But for Barrow, it's an important win. I think they're on 6 losses already this season, so just to get another win on the board is crucial. But I think they've done it without being particularly impressive, to be honest. I think they have relied on Will Stanway quite a lot. I know he's playing hot potato a little bit, but with a couple of those shots. But I'll put that down to the poor conditions, and ultimately, I think he saved them. Saved them 3 points there, to be fair. But I do think the performances from Barrow do need to be better than that in the long run, because you're not going to win many games playing the way they did against Crewe.
Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah, completely agree with that. I mean, the only other thing I wanted to bring up on this, and I am raising it purely because I'm a bitter Gillingham fan, but Owen Lunt is the second player in successive weeks that has received a retrospective 2-match ban for what we're calling it successful simulation. I think that's what we're going with now. In the game last week against Barnet. So obviously he was missing, which may or may not have caused some problems. But talking about conditions at Holker Street, the same can be said for quite a few games up and down the EFL over the course of the weekend, and we'll get onto it later. But I watched the Harrogate Shrewsbury game, and it was horrendous. So yeah, I dare say that played into Barrow's hands somewhat. Moving on, next match we've got to cover was Cambridge United 2, Fleetwood Town 1. Really interesting game. If you look at the statistics, Cambridge had 23 shots on Fleetwood's goal, with Fleetwood only replying with 9, which suggests a really one-sided game, which to be honest, really wasn't expecting. I didn't think Cambridge would go in and sort of dominate this match. Cambridge hit the bar in the first half, but that was about it. Found themselves behind on 62 minutes. Jordan Davis scoring for Fleetwood. Cambridge then scored 2 goals in less than 10 minutes, almost straight after that, through Adam Mayer and Shane Lavery, both coming from really poorly defended set pieces. Both a corner from the left-hand side. Really good result for Cambridge. Looking from the outside in, they're down up to 9th level on points with Bromley and Notts, and they're only 1 point off 5th place Grimsby, so puts them in a really good spot. Fleetwood, however, continue on this really, to be honest, poor run of form. It's the only way you can describe it. They've only won once in their last 7 games, which has left them down in 15th place. Luke, come to you first.
Yeah, I mean, I actually caught the first half of this game before I went off to ours. Unfortunately, missed all the goals, so still have to go back and watch them all, but always the way. But no, I think Cambridge from kickoff looked like the stronger side. I didn't score from any set pieces in that half, but they did look dangerous on set pieces even before they got those 2 in the second half. But for me, I think that first half they could have capitalised on it a whole lot more. Like, with the amount of control they had, they should have been leading going into the break, because I think by half time you had that bit of a regroup from Fleetwood, and they created a couple of chances. I know they hit the post shortly before they got the opening goal, but then it was a good bounce back from Cambridge to then go and score those 2 set pieces. Albeit I think it was the first one that was perhaps slightly lucky with the deflection, but you make your own luck sometimes. And you've got to ask the right questions, and they did that. I think my concern with Cambridge is just the proportion of goals that are set pieces, essentially. For all their control of games, they don't actually score that much from open play. I think it's 7 of their 11 goals this season have been set pieces, and I'd just like to see them, find that final ball in the box rather than needing a corner or a free kick or something like that to get that goal. I think the makings of a good side are there. I just think they've got another level to find. But then for Fleetwood, it is obviously a bit more concerning. I'd like to say, aside from that spell early in the second half, I don't think they really got into the game that much. They had a couple of one-off chances, but they just weren't really at it. They're struggling to get out of their half for a lot of that game, and Yeah, I think you're right to be concerned on them at the minute. They just need some kind of result.
Yeah, I think for me personally on Cambridge, I think when you get in the first half, I'm looking at it now, 12 shots to 2. And I know obviously neither side scored in the first half. But then shortly after the second half started, obviously Fleetwood got the lead. In that scenario, I feel like so many teams will collapse. I think, you've done so well, and sometimes you just don't have the rub of the green. You just can't find the back of the net, and it just feels like one of those days. And I think a lot of teams fall into that trap of just admitting it's one of those days and sort of collapse. However, in Cambridge's case, 5 minutes later they scored, and then 2 minutes after that they scored again to score the winner. That's insane mentality, and it is a mentality to come back straight away. There's no sort of hangover from it. They did hit the ground running right after they'd conceded. I think it puts them in good stead for the season if they do come up against those challengers, and they will. Every team does. How they'll navigate them. So I think that's a good sign from their point of view. Obviously, they need to hit the back of the net more. We know that. Because they wouldn't put themselves into that position. I mean, in the first half, out of those 12 shots, 1 was on target. So there's no denying that they need to find the back of the net. But the fact that they can come back and still score, equalise, win from losing positions is always good to note. In terms of Fleetwood's case, yeah, it's concerning. I mean, the last 3 were Notts County, Walsall, and Cambridge. I don't think they're exactly easy opposition. I think that's something. Obviously, they've had, 4 games, 3 games without a win. It is somewhat of a concern. But you've got to take into account who they're against. I think they are 3 sides that will probably be up there, or at least would like to be up there at the end of the season. And I mean, they're all in the top 10 at the moment. So you're asking the question of, well, it's, they might not be top 10 side, but I don't think it's huge cause for concern just yet. Maybe against the next fixture against Colchester, we'll see what happens then. Probably a draw in Colchester's case, because we know it's always draws, but we'll see.
Yeah, no, I could completely agree. They're 2 sides that conflict me really. I think I probably expect more from both of them based on who their managers are, if that makes sense. I think more so than probably quality of squad. I think obviously I'm not speaking for the fan bases of either side, but it might be that a top half finish and a bit of a building season might well be completely acceptable. But just knowing Neil Harris as I would, having him been our manager very recently, and Pete Wild, seeing what he's done everywhere he's been pretty much, you just expect them to be one of those sides that are going to be pushing for playoffs at the very least. So be interesting to see how Fleetwood bounce back, that's for sure. Moving on to our next match, we've got Notts County 4, Crawley Town 0. I did have one that did have this down as a goal fest in midweek, but I didn't think one side was going to be on the wrong end of a hammering, and that is exactly what happened to Crawley. Emphatic performance and a brilliant result for Notts, which helped them put that disappointing performance against us last week completely to bed. Goals from Scott Robertson, who I believe is starting his first league game in 11 months or something. So that, brilliant for him. Double from Spurs loanee Tyrese Hall, and then a trademark Alassane Jatta finish that'll do wonders for him. All 4 goals, I've got to say, really good goals. You question Crawley's defensive work on all of them, absolutely, but really good team goals and individual goals. Notts have flown up to occupy a 7th spot in the playoffs now, while Crawley stay quite firmly down at the wrong end of the table in 21st position. Really disappointed for Crawley. I thought they'd kind of started to turn those performances into results and started to find a little bit of consistency. Whereas Martin Patterson, and I suppose you can say this Notts County Technical Board thing that they've got coming on, are starting to really prove doubters wrong. Jack, come to you first on this.
Yeah, I'll admit I was one of those doubters, and I'll happily
As was I.
I mean, in the first half, they could have scored so many more goals, and I think they put the real pressure on early doors, which potentially surprised Crawley. And they sort of only really scored the goals when Crawley came back into the game, which is maybe something to look at. But it's a dominated performance, start to finish. I think there was going to be no question. Crawley is still a side that have their glimpses of hope for me. I think they have their moments, but it wasn't enough. And it was never going to be enough in such a ruthless Notts County side. I mean, 8 shots on target from 12 shots. That's something that, if we compare it to the 12 shots that Cambridge had in the first half that we were just talking about, they had 2 on target. It makes such a difference. If you're not hitting the target, then you're not going to score. It's football 101. And so the fact that they've got so many of their shots on target, they've got a good chance of scoring, and they've scored 4. So it shows, and that they're good at that sort of consistency. Tyrese Hall's a really interesting one. I'd be interested to see how he does further on in the season. Obviously, I mean, I know for Notts County, they've had their luck or good recruitment with sort of loanees and youngsters in the past, and I think that's another one that could prove good for them, obviously. Interested to see Ali Norburn left out. I am unsure on that reason, but that's interesting. Again, Jaden Luca with a hat-trick of assists. I mean, he's proven his worth in League 2 once again. So that's always good to see. And Jatta back with a bang, as always. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind, in anyone's mind, that he's going to come back and score. Jatta's doing what Jatta does, and I think people have to respect it at this point. He's always going to score if you give him those chances.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I don't have too much more to add in terms of Notts. It was just a top performance. I think the only very, very minor criticism I have is that they didn't, in the first half, they just weren't quite as clinical. They could have been further ahead from the chances they had. They did correct that in the second half, though. All 3 shots on target they had went in. So it's a very, very professional display in the end, and that's the sort of performance they're gonna need to put in to make sure that they are up there again this season. But I am now going to go and criticise Crawley heavily for the defending, because it was just so static. I don't want to blame the defence too much, because ultimately I think the midfield let them down, and they kind of just didn't bother tracking back, left the defence to their own devices. But at the same time, I don't think the defence helped themselves either. Like I said, just very, very static defending, made lives very hard for themselves. And I mean, even if their attack was firing that day, if you're defending like that, you're not going to win regardless. I think it's just frustrating, because the attacking performance, in my mind, wasn't actually too bad. They had chances. I think it was just kind of like in the final third, it was just one of those days. McCurdy had 1 or 2 that perhaps could have found the target a little bit easier. They weren't too far away off scoring. I know their XG was low and all the rest of it, but it's just the defence that really let them down on this occasion. And I almost wonder if they just couldn't impose their style of play on this game as much as perhaps they would have liked, because obviously we know how Lindsay's side like to set up. They like to dominate the ball, and they couldn't in a fixture like this. I think it was actually very even in terms of the possession stats, and Notts dealt with that a lot better than Crawley did, and Notts rightfully take the win.
Yeah, I just want to point out it's sort of Harry McCurdy FC at the moment for Crawley. He scored 4 goals and is the only one above 1 goal scored this season. So that's, I think, a problem they need to really look at. I mean, they've got 4 strikers in the squad. If none of them's hitting the target, that's a huge worry. And they've got a mix of experience and youth, and then Kabongo Tshimanga, who was absolutely ran riot in the National League, but struggled since coming to the EFL. Some of them need to find the back of the net if they want to stay in the league, and if they want to improve. One of them strikers has to take it and start scoring.
Yeah, agreed. To be honest, I think it was just a bit of a classic, not showing exactly what sort of quality and firepower they've got at the top end of the pitch, and Crawley, unfortunately, playing the way that Lindsay likes to play. Probably the perfect team for them to show that against. To be fair, but yeah, no, well put. Moving on to what I believe was going to be the pick of the weekend, and it certainly didn't disappoint. Salford 3, Swindon 2. Third at home to first at kickoff, with both sides looking to try and finish the day top of the league. Salford absolutely flew out of the blocks, and they were 1-0 up after an absolute worldie from Jules Grant, which was goal of the day, and that is saying something because there were some absolutely phenomenal goals across League Two, and Salford then found themselves 2-0 up on 15 minutes through Kadeem Harris, and it kind of looked a little bit like Swindon were in for a bit of a torrid day. But Swindon did what they are becoming quite famous for doing, and they managed to claw themselves back into it. Aaron Drinaldo, I am going to call him that because he keeps scoring, and you can't not. Continued his scoring form on 54 minutes, and then Bristol City loanee Jamie Knight-LaBelle equalised on 83. Kind of thought at that point maybe Swindon would again do the Swindon thing and completely turn the game on its head. But and also, I mean, to be fair, Butterworth had a really good opportunity at 2-2. I can't remember who it was that closed the ball down, but he was clean for a goal, and I think Drinham was completely clear in the middle of the box, didn't get the pass, hit the shot, went wide, one of those scenarios. But it was actually Salford that won it in the end through Callum Cisse. Brilliant game and a great advert for League Two, I thought. Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, spot on. It was a fantastic game for a neutral, and I mean, it kicked off in perfect fashion. That was an absolute worldie of an opener. There's not much you can really do when that happens.
No.
It's kind of just, okay, fair
Yeah.
play, that was good. But I do have more questions over the second one, though. I think the turnover of possession there was a little bit poor. But then I would also credit Salford for the grit and determination to get forward in that position. I think there are plenty of teams that wouldn't have been able to score that goal. But then equally, at the other end of the pitch, I think the equalising goal was a poor one to concede as well. So I think it's kind of a case of attacking was kind of king in this game. I don't think either defence was particularly strong. But in the end, obviously, Salford got the result. Perhaps a little bit fortunate just due to conditions. I don't think that ball would have held up quite as much if it hadn't been raining as much as it had been. But
Yeah.
you just got to play with what the surface you've got, don't you? And fortunately for them, that was enough to get them the result. And again, if you don't ask the questions, you don't get that sort of thing in your favour. So I think it does highlight the problem for Swindon. For me, obviously, it's not that big of a problem because when you can score that many goals, you're going to win a lot of the time anyway. But if they have promotion ambitions, it's the old cliche, isn't it? Attack wins games, defense wins titles, and they don't do much defending. And I think that's somewhere where they're going to have to improve because, yes, there are going to be plenty of games this season where they can just batter the opposition and just keep attacking them, and that will be enough. But when you're faced with a side that's got good attacking quality, you've got to have a bit more balance to your game as well. You can't do it against literally everyone in the league, and Salford have proven that. So I do think Swindon are going to have to learn how to defend sometimes, just a little bit. But no, it's not the most concerning result in the world for them, but it does highlight a weakness in their squad, is probably the way I'd put it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at Swindon's wins, it's been against Oldham, it's been against Shrewsbury and Barrow and Harrogate, teams who aren't going to be your toughest of opponents, with all respect to them. But they're not going to be the most attacking side. And so you can have that sort of attacking flexibility, and they can attack more and get higher up the pitch. And that's what Swindon do well. They dominate the ball and sort of games, really. And it's interesting to see how they come up against these tougher sides and how they're going to face. And I completely agree with you. They've just got to be more defensively solid. and then they'll score more than the opposition. It's quite as simple as that. Salford's case, I'm buzzing that Cisse scored the winner. I think he, in our game against Salford, was an exceptional footballer. For me, he was a star player. I don't think he quite showed it in the stats and the numbers, but just watching it, he ran riot around our midfield. He could have ran circles. He was dominant, and he's obviously popped up with the winners today, and happy for him and hope it continues for him, because I think he is a really good player that I didn't expect to sort of shine in this division, but I think he could be one to watch come lose half team of the years or half team of the seasons, end team of the seasons. We'll see if his name's included. But all good things for Salford. I think they're a really excited side. I mean, like I say, I've seen them against ourselves. They look like a real talented squad, and one that'll be up there with the side that we played this week as well. I think they'll both be up there come the end of the season.
I think it's really interesting, to be fair, because if you look at the top four at the moment, you've got Gillingham, Salford, Walsall, and Swindon. You've got two sides in Gillingham and Walsall that play arguably a very, very different style to both Salford and Swindon. And the goal differences are almost identical, with the exception of us at the minute, but it's very much at the minute. I think it's just making to be a really interesting sort of race at the top of the table as things stand. So, yeah, be watching that very, very carefully. Final game that we're going to cover in depth, apologies, Jack, is
we don't have to.
Walsall 4, Tranmere 2. To be honest, I think a lot of people probably had Walsall down as favourites for this game before it kicked off. But I did mention this while we were off air. I was very surprised and impressed at the same time that Tranmere managed to score 2 at the Bestcocks. That's not an easy thing to do. Evan Weir opened the scoring on 9 minutes with an outrageous free kick. It doesn't matter who you got in goal. That's flying into the top corner. Tranmere did equalise on 38 minutes. Whilst Joe Ironside was the goal scorer, I need to mention Josh Davison on that right hand side. Phenomenal play from him. Really determined. Great cross as well. But Evan Weir then hit another absolute sort of worldie just before half time. It looked like Tranmere were on top just before that went in, I will say. But cracking goal from Evan Weir. Dan Carnu then continued his great goal scoring run on 61 minutes, which looked like game over until Billy Blacker hit. It was a deflected strike. There's no two ways about it. But scored in the 89th minute. Thought that would set up a bit of a nervy finish, but then Albert Adoma put the game to bed in the 91st minute. Walsall's phenomenal run continues, and they find themselves up in 3rd position. I am going to credit Matt Sadler massively here, because I think he's probably the most under pressure manager in League Two. I think he still is, even now, even after this good run. A couple of results, it could all change for him, bless him. But his team look absolutely fantastic. Tranmere, on the other hand, Jack, I'm going to let you delve into this, but seem to be slipping further and further each week. Sort of now down in 17th position, only 4 points off the bottom 2.
Yeah, I think credit also for our first goal goes to the referee as well. I think so many blow up in that position where he sort of gets fouled and then stays on his feet, and ref played advantage, and obviously we scored from it, so fair play. Walsall's 4th goal, absolutely offside, so sort of credit goes away there.
It did look it, I must admit. It did look it.
So there's a 50-50 game there, but to be fair, I think the rest of the game he refed it well, and I think, fair play to him. Kept the game flowing, and it was, if I was a neutral, it would be a good game to watch. As a Tranmere fan, not so much. I think Walsall, and I've got to say it because I know that we've not given them credit in the past, and I know Walsall fans will be watching this happily. But I think, last season we got battered by them when at the Bestcott Stadium, and I said that I wasn't overly convinced that they were going to challenge last season when they were top of the league and however many points in first. But I wasn't too impressed. This time I really was. I think they could be a top side this season. I think Daniel Carnu is an exceptional footballer, and obviously he got his goal. And I think that link would play with him and Presley. It'll prove well this season. I do think they could be really up there. I think I was surprised at how quickly the mentality shifted after what happened at the end of last season. I think that was my only sort of factor that I'd put them where I put them in our pre-season predictions. But they've ignored it, and they've just gone straight away with these new players, and players that perhaps I'd heard of but not expected they'd be in League Two or as good as they seemed at the weekend. So they're going to surprise me, and I think they will do well this season. So fair play to them. I've got to talk about Tranmere, obviously, unfortunately. Yeah, good to see Joe Ironside off the mark. Good assist. But I think, again, it's a game where we had chances, but they're not chances that fill you with confidence. And maybe that's a season-on-season thing for us. I think for a while now, we've never really filled fans with confidence in front of goal, unless it's Amari Patrick on the edge of the box. We're going to be struggling, and I think that's been the case for a while. But like you say, 2 good goals at the Bescott is not something to be disheartened about. We've just got to, when we do score, the defence goes, which is something that needs to be sorted. I think fans are sort of getting nervy about the manager at the moment, which I understand. I think I completely understand it. It was the same last season. After a good first 4 games, it sort of gets a bit shaky. But for me, there's absolutely no chance that you should sack Andy Crosby at this point, or even 18 games in. I think you've still got to look at it with a little bit of context. I think Tranmere is a club potentially. I mean, my mid-teen years, we had 3 playoff finals in 3 years. In 5 years, we had 4 playoff finals and a Papa John's Trophy final. Like, we've seen, that was my mid-teen years. I've seen Tranmere be competitive year on year on year, and when you've been flying down the table year on year, in that final playoff campaign in 2020-2021, we were 7th, then we were 9th, then we were 12th, then we were 16th, then we were 20th, and then there's this season. There's only one way we're going. And we've had countless managers, we've had countless players, countless staff, and it's still going that case. And I think you're just looking at, obviously, a takeover going through. If and when, we all know it's going to happen at some point. It's just when. I think we're waiting for that to properly see, real improvements. I think, obviously, money restraints. We've gained a smaller squad this season. And then you've got our first choice goalkeeper out injured long term. You've got what was our first choice striker last season out long term. Leo O'Connor, who I would say is our best defender, I'd say our best player at the club, out at the moment. You've got 3 good players there who are all out injured. You're going to be struggling anyway when you've got a squad as small as we do. I was saying off air to you both, we've got 2 true centre backs at the club, and we're playing a back 3. You're always going to be struggling when there's injuries happening, and I think there's no surprise that we're having this poor run of form when we've got those injuries, or when we bring a striker in on deadline day and he needs a chance to get up to fitness. It's going to happen. And it's just something that context needs to be had. I get that everyone wants Tranmere to be competitive. We are a competitive team, in my opinion. I think we should be a League One club with that sort of size. But it's not going to happen overnight, and I don't think it's going to happen until we get that takeover. So stability, mid-table finish. I think we all predicted that for Tranmere anyway. It'll be like this season, I think. And I think if we just ride it out, as long as we don't get relegated, hopefully have a decent finish, and potentially, new owners, new investment, and we'll be on the up. But at the moment, it's just waiting until that happens.
Yeah, I mean, I do think there are still positives to it. I personally don't necessarily see the attacking issue quite as much. Tranmere have scored more than the majority of teams in the league. I know there are a few teams towards the top end. I think we've scored more as well, but there aren't many more than that. You look at the bottom half, you've scored more than most of those sides. It just is that defence. I was having a quick look through the games, and I think the only 2 clean sheets you've got were against Crawley and Shrewsbury, who aren't exactly. I think that was when Crawley weren't necessarily at their attacking best, and Shrewsbury haven't really found their attacking best yet, to be honest, at all. So it's that side of things that need improvement. But as you say, availability is evidently an issue there. And don't talk to me about defensive injuries; I might cry. Um, but no, I think credit to Walsall on this one. First things first, can I just ask what Evan Weir had for breakfast that morning? I would quite like some. Those were two fantastic strikes. Like, fair play.
Yeah.
But I mean, I know I've been heavily critical of Walsall in recent weeks, and I know I've had their fans on my back for my comments. But when I say I didn't think they were looking like top contenders, that's because the performance they put in against Tranmere, that's what I was looking for. That was easily their best performance of the season so far. It felt like watching Walsall of last season. They didn't need much of the ball to do a whole lot of damage, and the quality of chances was good. And the other thing I questioned was the lack of a goal scorer, and in that time, Daniel Carney's now got a goal a game for the last 3 games. He didn't do much against us, which is probably where my concern stemmed from. I didn't necessarily see what he was doing, but he's obviously gone up a level since then. So got to give credit where it's due. I now need to see them maintain this level of performance, because if they can maintain that level, that's where I think they become a threat and start to look like a promotion contender. That it's just a case of that's the level I look for, and absolutely fair play. I think they found it.
The only thing I will say on Walsall, there is only one minor concern I do have, and it's just their squad depth, very specifically in central midfield. I think up front, okay, Kanu scoring the goals, great, and they've, appreciate they've got Jamil Matt and a couple of other players that can probably fill in at the top end, but in central midfield they look a little bit light. What I'm also hoping from a Walsall perspective, different to last year with Daniel Kanu, if he keeps this up, I pray the Nathan Lowe scenario doesn't rear its head again. They obviously had Nathan Asimwe from Cheltenham at the back end of last season, and he came in and played really, really well, and he's obviously earned himself a League One loan this season. So hopefully Cheltenham have obviously seen what they did with Asimwe, liked it, and said to Dan Carnu, "You're going there for the season. Get yourself a promotion." That's what I hope. So really, really good stuff though from Walsall, and hopefully, Jack, for Tranmere, you pick up in the next few weeks. Right, that was it for our deep dive. So we will go through and round up the remaining fixtures, starting with Harrogate 2, Shrewsbury Town 0. I did watch this game live. Scoreline's obviously not a good one. I actually thought Shrewsbury looked really, really good in the first half. To be honest, I think all they were missing was a goal. They did have 2 stonewall penalty shouts waved away as well in this match. Both Sam Stubbs and Tom Anderson went up injured, which killed them. That was at 0-0. I think that killed them because both goals, in my opinion, Toto and Ciala was at fault for both of them. Great finish from Jack Muldoon for the first one, but it's a simple ball over the top. Ciala's just been caught underneath it. And then Ciala backed off and allowed Conor McElhenney to nip inside and hit one from range. Great strike, fair play to him, but you've got to shut your man down, in my opinion. Harrogate didn't really have to work too hard. Really good professional job against a side that are devoid, seemingly, of any confidence at the minute. Salop remain second bottom, only got 5 points, whereas Harrogate have pushed themselves 6 points outside the relegation zone into 16th. Luke, start with
you. Yeah, I mean, I don't think Harrogate were particularly impressive in this one, to be honest. But it's just a case of they found a way to win, and I think you've hit the nail on the head with Shrewsbury. It's just that confidence is totally gone, and it's 10 shots without one on target in the first half alone, and I think that kind of summarises the problem right there. Just I dare say too much on Shrewsbury because we've got them next, so I won't say too much else. But no, it's an important win for Harrogate. Just again, you'd hope to see the performances improve.
Yeah, I think easy fixture, expected. The only sort of slight thing from the season, I think people looked at a defence of Tom Anderson, Will Boyle, Insiala, but also Sam Stubbs, the three coming into the club, and obviously Insiala was there last season, I'm pretty sure. And so people were reassured by that defence, but for me, it's always too old, and I don't know. I never felt it was right for the club, and they're certainly showing the sort of defensive worries at the moment. It might change, but I don't think it will. And I am worried. I'm really worried for Shrewsbury. How long is this going to keep going until the pressure on Michael Appleton? The only team below them has sacked the manager this weekend, so the sort of fingers are pointed at Shrewsbury now to be the next one, and we'll just wait and see if they make that decision.
I do, just before we move on very quickly, I do want to mention Shrewsbury's 17-year-old central midfielder Isaac England. To start him away at Harrogate in conditions like that, I was a little bit blown away by him in the first half. Appreciate there wasn't any goals or assists, but brave on the ball, positive, passed it forward, showed great vision. I have a feeling that there are going to be some big boys taking a look at him relatively soon. Moving on, next match, Bromley 2, Chesterfield 2. Looked a really good game. Chesterfield showed a lot more grit than I assumed they would, although I gave them credit for midweek, so fair play to them. Bromley managed to get another good solid result against another really good sort of a really good side looking for promotion. Point, not a bad result for either side. I don't think they'll dwell on it too much. Both will probably feel that they could have won it, but they'll just go, yeah, brilliant, we'll move on. Jack, over to you.
Yeah, like I say, easy result. Probably the right result for both sides, both pushing at that top end of the table. McAcheek's got a goal, as I say, give him the ball and he will score more chances than he won't. But again, those sort of creative midfielders for Chesterfield proving their worth and getting the goal as well. Yeah, neutral result, point game for both sides, really.
Yeah, I mean, Bromley just always seem to find a way to score 2 goals, and well, a lot of the time from set pieces. That's 11 out of their 14 goals have been set pieces. They are absolutely brutal from them. Maybe a little bit of a similar problem to Cambridge in the sense that I'd like to see them do more from open play, but I suppose if you can score 2 a game, that's normally enough, to be fair. Only thing I'd add on Chesterfield is I feel like they need to get Mandeville on the pitch a bit more. I feel like their side just has a little bit of a better balance with him on the pitch. I appreciate it's difficult with the depth they've got in attacking areas. Like, they had to bench Mark Ande to get him in. But I think it works better with him on the pitch. That's just personally my opinion on it. But a decent point on the road anyway.
I think Mandeville's a really underrated player in this league. Really, really underrated.
Yeah, no, fair play. Moving on to the next game, we did mention it very briefly earlier on, but Cheltenham 0, Oldham Athletic 3. It's really hard not to focus on just how poor Cheltenham have been and are. Michael Flynn walked into the press conference after the game and said, I believe, I'm quoting him here, when I say this is the worst squad of players I've ever had, and then began to talk about the terms of desire, professionalism and character. He was then sacked, I think, an hour later or something like that. So really damning. I do want to talk about Oldham very quickly, though. Another win. That's 3 wins on the bounce. No goals conceded. Puts them up into 11th, but they're only 1 point off the playoffs. I think Mickey Mellon's done an outrageous job so far, to be honest with you. I've liked them since the start of the season, and I think they're now reaping the rewards of good performances. Luke, a lot to digest, obviously on the pitch, but clearly off it in Cheltenham's case.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of felt inevitable, that sacking, unfortunately. I don't think it's necessarily entirely his fault. I think there's a lot going on in the background that we maybe don't necessarily fully understand from the outside. But ultimately, you have to do something. The results aren't there, and the performances certainly aren't there either. And that shows with a 3-0 here against an Oldham side that haven't scored too many, although granted they've improved in recent weeks. It just kind of comes down to that next appointment, whoever that may be. that becomes absolutely crucial, and it's probably the biggest decision in Cheltenham's recent history. Because if they get this one wrong, that's probably them out of the Football League. And because you've got to give the next manager time to at least try and build something. They just need to find a way of winning. I don't know if they've changed their system since they played us, which was obviously the 5-0, but they were trying to press us high and all the rest of it, but they were leaving so many gaps at the back, and I don't think they've got the players to make that system work. I think they'd be better off just trying to make themselves tough to beat, even if that means sitting a little deeper and actually taking a bit of inspiration from Walsall. If they've got players that have energy to actually try and press high in the first place, they're probably going to be quite decent for counter-attacking as well. So maybe I think they just need to create a more robust system. And I don't know which managers are currently available to potentially play that way, but I think that's the way they've got to do it. But no, just quickly on Oldham. I mean, I saw this result coming a mile away. It was quite handy for my fantasy teams actually, because I doubled up on Oldham defenders and I had them as one of my teams as well. So perfect. Thank you very much. It was a very professional performance, and it probably could have been more. The only other thing I'll add is Kane Drummond still hasn't scored a goal. Got a shot on target this week, so he's improving. But then Luke Cannon did miss an easy one on his behalf. So I'm still waiting. I'm going to keep mentioning Kane Drummond until he scores a goal. He's got to score eventually, surely, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think people were worried about Oldham at the start of the season, but this is what he does. It's what Mickey Mellon does in this division. They're a good Oldham side. They'll do well this season, and I think we all know that. We know what Mickey Mellon is. We know what he does with his squads. He's got his son now in his team, which I think we were crying out for season on season when he was at Tranmere. But yeah, they're performing well, and it looks all good for Tranmere's B team. Well, not so much at the moment, to be fair. They've only got one ex-Tranmere in the team. They've only got Manny Monte, but no, they are a good side, and I think they're doing well at the moment. Cheltenham, you say it perfectly. It all rests on who's their next manager. That's their Football League status up for grabs. So we'll wait and see. But there's a lot of pressure on them at the moment.
Yeah, it really is that important for them, this decision. Moving on, Colchester United 1, Bristol Rovers 1. I actually predicted this scoreline midweek. I think it's a point that Darrell Clark will be absolutely delighted with. So thank you very much, and travel back to Bristol with it. It's just another game that Colchester haven't won. That's the only way I can look at it. They've only got one win to their name in the first 9 games. Obviously, they're showing signs of being a horrible team to play against and being really difficult to beat. But they've drawn 5 games. That's matched only by Bromley, but Bromley have clearly turned more into wins. Jack, come to you first.
Yeah, I've just looked at the stats. All 5 of Colchester's draws have been 1-1, so I think whoever's predicting next week, whack that on there. I think that's just ridiculous. I mean, we all know Colchester love a draw. We saw it last season, but that is just insane. Another Colchester draw. What more can you say? At this point, they'll be slap bang in the middle of the table come the end of the season. We'll wait and see. More drop points for Bristol Rovers, but not overly concerned. I think it's always going to take time to readjust to the division.
Yeah, not too much to add on Colchester really. Just I suppose it's not quite as bad of a problem as being on a losing streak, being on a drawing streak. They're at least competitive in games, but they really do need that win to bring them along, because ultimately 46 draws is 46 points. That's still relegation form, so they do need to get that win eventually. But no, Bristol Rovers on the other hand, I feel like maybe it's just me, but I feel like they're getting in the habit of starting games really strong and then just letting their opposition come back into the game. I mean, that's pretty much exactly what happened in the Newport game as well. I just think they need to do more to put games to bed, and I think with the quality they've got at their disposal, they're capable of doing that. They've just not quite found that level yet. And I think it will click, though. I think we've seen gradual improvements. So I think they're a team to watch over the coming weeks.
Yeah, and I mean, one positive for him, the first goal of the season for Micah and Bick on loan from Charlton, really highly rated young forward. So um, who knows? Maybe he can start to turn those draws into wins for them. Luke, your turn next. Very sorry, mate. MK Dons 1, Accrington Stanley 2. Shock of the day for me, and I don't mean that. I don't mean Aki any disrespect at all. I think I'd say about most teams that go to Stadium MK and dominate the game and win. I'd say the same about my own side. Stanley did look to dominate the game from start to finish, with the exception of, I think, possession, but not by much. Another goal from Isaac Sinclair, 2-2 for him. Charlie Caton scoring the winner after Alex Gilby equalised. Luke Offord was sent off late in the game. It did look like a bit of a nasty one to me in the corner at the end of the match. Looked like somebody who was losing his head a little bit. Tyler Walton was stretched off for Accrington. Not entirely sure on the severity of that injury, but yeah, could be a bit of a problem for Accrington if he's going to be out for a little while. Aki up to 18th, 4 clear of the bottom 2. Good result for them. MK slipped to 14th, but still only 2 points off the playoff places. Luke's going to tell us all about injuries in a minute, I dare say. So give it a couple of weeks, and maybe they'll be back up there. Go for it, Luke. Take it away.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously it's a poor run of form for us, but ultimately we win one of the 3 games we lost, and we're actually 5th instead of 14th, I think, at the minute. But no, I will give credit to Accrington. I think they're probably the second best side we've faced after Grimsby, and yeah, I mean, I wasn't expecting to lose that game on pretty much every metric apart from possession. I've got to also give credit specifically to Isaac Heath. Looks like a fantastic player. I appreciate he wasn't actually playing against a natural fullback, but he still made life difficult for just about anyone he came up against. And if he keeps performances up like that I'd expect him to get recalled and moved up to League One. He was that good. So certainly one to watch if you're playing Accrington in the next few weeks. For us, just yeah, I mean, we were good for the first 15 minutes. That was kind of it. We kind of just decided after that, you know what, we'll let the intensity drop a little bit. Obviously, got punished for it with a very poor goal to concede. Quite fortunate with the goal we scored. It was a blatant foul. Patterson's just pushed their defender into the goalkeeper. I don't know how we've got away with that. I'm a little bit scared of those 2 match bans if they're going to start bringing those in for anything. They honestly, they could do it at this point.
Who knows? Who knows?
But no. Yeah, it was just poor from us across the board. I know one was saying we lacked physicality. That's not too surprising when we played 2 holding midfielders that were Dan Crawley and Liam Kelly. Yeah, not much height or physicality there. So I think it's just a case of we weren't catering enough to the opposition. We had players. Yes, we're depleted in terms of numbers, but we had players that we could have put into that midfield, like a Will Collar, which we did at halftime, or a Kane Thompson-Thomas that would have added physicality. I also think playing 2 holding midfielders against Accrington, too defensive, personally. We're at home, maybe attack them a little bit more. But no, it just looked like those players hadn't really played together before, which is worrying because 7 of those were here last season, so that we don't even have the dreaded gelling excuse. But yeah, like I said, I'm not going to use the injuries as an excuse for a match like that, because with all due respect, I think that's the sort of game where we should have been winning regardless. There was enough quality on that pitch that should have done a job. I think it's a case of Accrington just wanted the win a whole lot more than we did, and credit to them there, because they absolutely deserve that win.
Yeah, I mean, you've got, when they were at Notts County, you had 2 of Notts County's best players on the pitch, Naman and Crawley. You've got Hepburn Murphy, who was brilliant, Mendes Lang and Patterson. Alex Gilby for yourself last season was good. I think it is a squad that should be winning, which is a shame. And I can't comment on MK Dons because for last season I was trying to figure out what's been going wrong, and I still can't figure it out. It feels like a curse at this point. I can't see how they're losing games. There's no physical explanation. There's no written explanation for why they should be losing games like that. I guess that's the joy of football, because you get teams that are not of, and no disrespect to Accrington, but not of the quality of an MK Dons. I think their quality is a League One side on paper, even the one that was playing on Saturday. But you get these sides who are coming up against them and dominating, and that's the joy of why we watch football. Not to get too into it, but you know that's why we watch football, and I think that's the beauty of it. Accrington showing that maybe they're not a relegation favourite like some may have thought, or be down there, so that's really good from their point of view. I think they've shown some really good qualities and strengths so far this season, so I'm not worried about them at all at the moment. I think they'll be fine. MK Dons just need to sort whatever it is at this point. They just need to sort it out and get moving, because they've got the quality. They just need to show it on the pitch, and we'll wait and see. Maybe that we'll figure out what that is at some point in the future. Who knows? And if anyone does know, please let us know so we can pass it on. But at the moment, I've not got a clue.
Someone tell Paul Warren immediately, please.
Right, finally, and I'm going to do this without smiling too much, I promise. Newport County 1, Gillingham 3. Frantic is the only way I can describe this football match. It was just a little bit mental. Opoku put Newport County 1-0 ahead after about 40 seconds, which completely shell-shocked us. Gillingham looked completely out of sorts. Also then gave a penalty away, so Newport County were ordered a penalty on the 9th minute, which, had they have scored that penalty, I think we're looking at a very, very different game, to be brutally honest. But Antwi stepped up, had his penalty saved by Glenn Morris. 41-year-old Glenn Morris, I will add, phenomenal goalkeeper. Antwi then also missed the rebound. After that, tide changed, as you could probably imagine. Bradley Dack equalised in the 23rd minute with a really good strike after a corner bounced out to him. Gillingham went 2-1 up through an unbelievable solo effort from Johnny Smith, and he's very unlucky he scored this on the same day that George Grant scored his goal against Swindon, because I think it would be goal of the day otherwise. Phenomenal goal. Gills then got a penalty of their own. Sam Gale was brought down in the box, and Bradley Dack stepped up and put it away. Second half was very similar to the first. Newport had plenty of opportunities, make absolutely no mistake about it. It was a ridiculously open game. Very abnormal for us to be involved in a match like it, to be honest with you. Newport showed that they've got quite a lot about them, in my opinion. Whilst I think we made many mistakes, many errors, we also had plenty of opportunities to go and make the scoreline wider than 3-1. So really good game, really physical, a bit of a brutal one. Gillingham now unbeaten in a club record 21 league fixtures, sitting top of the table on 21 points, while Newport stay 22nd, level on points with second bottom Shrewsbury. But again, do want to keep caveating that with what they showed back end of the game against Bristol Rovers, then again against Tranmere, and then what they showed against Gillingham at the weekend. That they've given me a little bit more hope and a little bit more reason to believe that they'll be okay. And Gills obviously carrying on with this ridiculous unbeaten run, and actually scoring 3 goals in an away game, which in itself is bonkers. Jack, I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to pass it over to you.
Yeah, I think the one part on Gillingham, I said it about Walsall last season, I said it Bradford last season when they went on their run, is how Gillingham react when they stop this run. Because I think we saw it time and time again last season where teams would really impress early on, go on these really amazing runs, and then sort of collapse as soon as they hit their first hurdle. We'll wait and see what happens with Gillingham. Obviously, for your sake, I hope they don't and they get back up and keep running. But that's my only concern. I mean, we saw how they collapsed last season, and we don't want to see a repeat of that. So fingers crossed. Obviously, when that comes, we know it's going to come at some point.
It will be when. Absolutely, it will be when.
How they recover from that. So that's an interesting point. But so far, so good for Gillingham. You can't really complain. And you've got strikers coming back, which is insane to me. When you're doing so well, you've got probably the 2 best strikers. Sam Vokes and Seb Palmer-Holden were obviously injured at the start of the season. Obviously coming back respectively at different times, but still both coming back. since the season kicked off. Newport, concern around keeper again. Not much else to say. We'll see what happens with Newport. I think Michael Flynn's going there. I think that's nailed on whenever the manager gets sacked, because I think he will. I think Michael Flynn at Newport is just such a good fit again. I could see that happening all day, every day, but I'm not sure it'll work in Newport's favour.
Yeah, I mean, with Newport, I'm actually going to give them a little bit of credit for once. It's amazing what happens when you actually try and win a game. I've been saying this the entire time. Stop playing for a point at home, and you can actually kind of contest. They've gone to what is essentially the strongest side in the division as of right now. You can't say otherwise when you're on a 21 game unbeaten streak. And they've made them work for it. Okay, albeit yes, they've not got the result, but if they played like that every game, they wouldn't be as low down as they are. So I think that's a huge lesson for them, and one that you kind of hope that they'll carry on and keep on improving in that fashion, because it shows what they're capable of, albeit that they lost 3-1 in the end. But yeah, Gillingham, can't argue with it. Just fantastic result. Yes, a bit of a slow start, but after that it was back to normal, I suppose, and just a really, really strong performance. Dealt with the adversity well. Although to be fair, I think the missed penalty probably helped. Newport really need a penalty taker. Please stop missing them. But no, I digress. It was just another really good performance from Gillingham. I'm just hoping you kind of lose soon, because I know we've got you coming up. I think it's the game after next, actually. So we'll see how that one goes. But yeah, no, fair play. Very good result.
Yeah, no, really, really pleased. We're over the moon with it. I think the only thing I will say, the last 2 away games we have started horrifically, because Bromley were 2 up after about 12 minutes. In this game we could have quite easily been 2-0 down inside 10 minutes again. So that is something to work on, but we cannot fault us. We've been absolutely unbelievable, and long may it continue. Right. Well, thank you for listening, everybody. That wraps up another Fourth Tier Fever review show on the Football Deck. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the channel. And if you're listening via our streaming platform, then please download the podcast from wherever you get your podcast from. As always, we love to hear your thoughts on the matches. So please comment and get involved, so we can have that back and forth with you. Final thank you to our sponsor Skybet, and we will be seeing you for another preview show midweek. Thank you very much.